The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Night Time, chapter 131. These are some of the reasons why I hate yellow and brown. Yellow. Number 1, custard. Number 2, bananas. Bananas also turn brown. Number 3, double yellow lines. And number 4, yellow fever, which is a disease from tropical America and West Africa which causes a high fever, acute nephritis, jaundice and hemorrhages, and it is caused by a virus transmitted by the bite of a mosquito. And nephritis is inflammation of the kidneys. Number 5, yellow flowers. Because I get hay fever from flower pollen, which is one of the three sorts of hay fever, and the others are from grass pollen and fungus pollen, and it makes me feel ill. Number 6, sweet corn. Because it comes out in your poo and you don't digest it, so you're not really meant to eat it, like grass or leaves. Brown. Number 1, dirt. Number 2, gravy. Number 3, poo. Number 4, wood. Because people used to make machines and vehicles out of wood, and they don't anymore because wood breaks and goes rotten and has worms in it sometimes. And now people make machines and vehicles out of metal and plastic, which are much better and more modern. And number 5, Melissa Brown, who is a girl at school who is not actually brown. It's just her name. But she tore my big astronaut painting into 2 pieces, and I threw it away even after Mrs. Peters sellotaped it together again because it looked broken. Mrs. Forbes said that hating yellow and brown is just being silly, and Siobhan said that she shouldn't say things like that and everyone has favourite colours. Siobhan was right, but Mrs. Forbes was a bit right too, because it is sort of being silly. But in life, you have to take lots of decisions, and if you don't take decisions, you would never do anything because you would spend all your time choosing between things you could do. So it is good to have a reason why you hate some things and you like others. It's like being in a restaurant, like when Father takes me out to Burnley Inn sometimes, and you have to look at the menu and you have to choose what you're going to have. But you don't know if you're going to get something that you like because you haven't tasted it yet. So you have favourite foods and you choose these, and you have foods that you don't like and you don't choose these, and then it is simple. Chapter 137. The next day, Father said he was sorry that he had hit me, and he didn't mean to. He made me wash the cut on my cheek with Dettol to make sure that it wasn't infected. And then he got me to put a plaster on it so that it didn't bleed. Then, because it was Saturday, he said he was going to take me on an expedition to show me that he was properly sorry. And we were going to Twycross Zoo. So he made me some sandwiches with white bread and tomatoes and lettuce and ham and strawberry jam for me to eat because I don't like eating food from places I don't know. And he said it would be okay because there wouldn't be too many people at the zoo because it was forecast to rain. And I was glad about that because I don't like crowds of people. I like it when it's raining. So I went and got my waterproof, which is orange. Then we drove to Twycross Zoo. I had never been to Twycross Zoo before, so I didn't have a picture of it in my mind before we got there. So we brought a guidebook from the information centre, and then we walked around the whole zoo, and I decided which were my favourite animals. My favourite animals were, number 1, Randy Man, which was the name of the oldest red-faced black spider monkey ever kept in captivity. Randy Man is 44 years old, which is the same age as Father. He used to be a pet on a ship and have a metal band around his stomach, like in the stories about pirates. Number 2, the Patagonian sea lions, which are called Miracle and Star. And number 3, Maliku, which is an orangutan. I liked it, especially because it was lying in a kind of hammock made out of a pair of stripy green pyjama bottoms, and on the blue plastic notice next to the cage, it said that it made the hammock itself. Then we went to the cafe, and Father had plaice and chips and apple pie and ice cream and a pot of Earl Grey tea, and I had my sandwiches and I read the guidebook for the zoo. And Father said, I love you very much, Christopher. Don't ever forget that. And I know I lose my rag occasionally. I know I get angry. I know I shout. And I know I shouldn't. But I only do it because I worry about you. Because I don't want to see you getting into trouble. Because I don't want you to get hurt. Do you understand? I didn't know whether I understood, so I said, I don't know. And Father said, Christopher, do you understand that I love you? And I said, yes. Because loving someone is helping them when they get into trouble and looking after them and telling them the truth. And Father looks after me when I get into trouble, like coming to the police station. And he looks after me by cooking my meals for me. And he always tells me the truth, which means that he loves me. And then he held up his right hand and spread his fingers out in a fan. And I held up my left hand and spread my fingers out in a fan. And we made our fingers and thumbs touch each other. Then I got out a piece of paper from my bag and I did a map of the zoo from memory as a test. Then we went and looked at the giraffes, and the smell of their poo was like the smell inside the gerbil cage at school and when we had gerbils. And when they ran, their legs were so long it looked like they were running in slow motion. Then Father said we had to get home before the roads got busy. Chapter 139. I like Sherlock Holmes, but I do not like Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who was the author of Sherlock Holmes, the Sherlock Holmes stories. That is because he wasn't like Sherlock Holmes and he believed in the supernatural. And when he got old, he joined the Spiritualist Society, which meant that he believed you could communicate with the dead. This was because his son died of influenza during the First World War and he still wanted to talk to him. And in 1917, something famous happened called the case of the Cottingley fairies. Two cousins called Francis Griffiths, who was 9 years old, and Elsie Wright, who was 16 years old, said they used to go and play with fairies by a stream called Cottingley Beck. And they used Francis's father's camera to take 5 photos of the fairies. But they weren't real fairies. They were drawings on pieces of paper they cut out and stood up with pins, because Elsie was a really good artist. Harold Snelling, who is an expert in fake photography, said, "These dancing figures are not made of paper nor any fabric. They are not painted on a photographic background. But what gets me most is that all these figures have moved during the exposure." But he was being stupid because paper would move during an exposure, and the exposure was very long because in the photograph you can see a little waterfall in the background and it is blurred. Then Sir Arthur Conan Doyle heard about the pictures and he said he believed that they were real in an article in a magazine called The Strand. But he was being stupid too, because if you look at the pictures, you can see that the fairies look just like fairies in old books, and they have wings and dresses and ties and shoes, which is like aliens landing on the earth and being like Daleks from Doctor Who, or Imperial stormtroopers from the Death Star in Star Wars, or little green men like in cartoons of aliens. And in 1981, a man called Joe Cooper interviewed Elsie Wright and Francis Griffiths for an article in a magazine called The Unexplained. And Elsie Wright said all 5 photographs had been faked, and Francis Griffiths said 4 had been faked but 1 was real. And they said Elsie had drawn the fairies from a book called Princess Mary's Gift Book by Arthur Shepperson. And this shows that sometimes people want to be stupid and they do not want to know the truth. And it shows that something called Occam's razor is true. And Occam's razor is not a razor that men shave with, but a law. And it says, "Entia non sunt multiplicanda praeter necessitam," which is Latin, and it means no more things should be presumed to exist than are absolutely necessary, which means that a murder victim is usually killed by someone known to them, and fairies are made out of paper, and you can't talk to someone who is dead.